we are discussing how so many of us have a false view of what love is. We have been through relationships and had experiences in our lives that have really tainted and distorted the concept of love. And so tonight we're talking about the reclamation of that. And in order for us to really dive into our conversation for today, I actually want to start off with just a quick review of today's lesson from A Course in Miracles. We have been reading this throughout the better part of this year. Every single day, there's a daily lesson that just serves as kind of a prompt for our conversation this evening. And so as I pulled this up, there was a line in it that I really wanted to focus on that's going to be driving our conversation for this evening. So let me go ahead and we're going to read that together. Lesson 234. Father, today I am your son again. Today we will anticipate the need when dreams of sin and guilt are gone, and we have reached the holy peace we never left. Merely a tiny instant has elapsed between eternity and timelessness. So brief the interval, there was no lapse in continuity, nor break in thoughts, which are forever unified as one. Nothing has ever happened to disturb the peace of God, the Father, and the Son. This we accept as wholly true today. We thank you, Father, that we cannot lose the memory of you or your love. We recognize our safety and give thanks for all the gifts you have bestowed on us, for all the loving help we have received, and for your eternal patience and the word which you have given us that we are saved. Y'all, this line is the one that I wanted to really kind of meditate on tonight. Nothing has ever happened to disturb the peace of God, the Father, and the Son. And the Son is you and me. We have been adopted and grafted into the family of God, and He loves us. And what an incredible thought that is. And so this concept that nothing has ever really happened to disturb this peace that He has secured for us, that is Him basically saying, you're one with me, you are part of my family, you have my inheritance. There's this story that actually feels really appropriate right now. There's this biblical narrative of a father who has two sons, and one son, both of them are given share in the inheritance of the father, but the father is alive, and so the inheritance obviously is not available yet. Inheritance comes on the heels of the death of the individual. And so what the son does, the younger of the two, he goes to his father and basically says, I wish you were dead. And the way he basically says that is by way of asking for his inheritance now while the father is still living. So the father has to go and sell half of what he owns to give the son the inheritance. And then the son goes and parties and lives it up and effectively squanders all of the inheritance that was his. And then finally, after a long time, it says that he came to his senses and is recognizing the fact that even the servants at his father's house, they're faring better than he is, because at this point he's spent all of his money, he has nothing left, and he's working with pigs and like trying to make ends meet. So finally he decides to go home. But when he shows up with his, to meet his father, which I'm sure the whole way home he's like practicing, what do I say, how do I ask for forgiveness, how do I ask for a chance? He actually sees his father running towards him, because little does he know, his father's actually been sitting and waiting for the son to come home. And then when the son does see his father, it says he falls at his feet and just says, like, I'm so incredibly sorry for what I've done. But here's the thing. The father then goes, after the son has basically said, I wish you were dead, taken half of everything the father has worked for and spent all of it. He comes back with nothing. Yet the father is so thrilled to see his son. He kills the fattened calf and throws this big party celebrating his son's return. So this concept of our conversation tonight around, is it possible for love to be disturbed, and what does it even mean to experience the love of God? This is just the perfect depiction of it, that we come to God and we're like, oh man, I'm sorry I messed up. Man, what's going to happen? What price am I going to have to pay? I really screwed up. And God's sitting there waiting and so thrilled to have us back home, that he, so much to the point that he goes and has a party for us. So the lesson tonight that we're really kind of trying to believe is that nothing has ever happened to disturb the peace of God the Father and the Son. There is nothing that we can do that would separate us from the love of God. And so then the question becomes, well, what is love? What is the love of God, that there could be something so incredibly powerful that there really is nothing we can do to change that? There's nothing we can do to deter the love and fervor and passion that God has for you and me. And so then when we come to ask, okay, well, what is love? There's actually a verse that says we are, or that God is love. Like God is the essence of love. He is the definition in and of itself. So when we're sitting here wondering, well, what is love? Well, it's who is God? And coming to know God is thus coming to know love. And I have found that every single human encounter with love actually gives us a glimpse into God and who he is towards us. You know, we see actually this kind of love in the mother to the child, hopefully the healthy mother to the child, you know, who just has this ability to have her child cry and cry and cry and still love the baby and still want to be with the child. And we see this in the way that, you know, animals can even love their owner. There's this an integrity and a loyalty there that's just seemingly never ending, so long as the owner is treating it right. So there's always a contingency. But with God, there is no contingency, because God is in and of himself pure and perfect and not needing you and me. And so therefore his love can actually be pure. This is actually what's really interesting. And I hadn't thought about it from this perspective. Love between humans or even with animals. I mean, if a dog is abused, they do not love their owner anymore. But love between human beings and animals is always going to be contingent based on a need that we have. There's an internal need we have to have survival, have our needs met, to have oxygen, food, water, etc. There's a desire for connection. So if you're not giving me love back, my love can only go so far to love you without condition, unless we have experienced the love of God and we are loving through his love and giving that to other people, which is unconditional. That is effectively, you know, when we think about the marks of love, it's unconditional. It also is wholly good. And like, I don't need you to love me back. I am self-sufficient. This kind of love of God is self-sufficient. It does not need a return or reciprocation of that love. And just before we keep going, I just want to jump here in the chat and just greet you guys. Hello, Lewan, Joseph, good to see you. RDK, thanks for joining. Ryan, thanks for joining. Percocet, hello. I'm glad to see your name. Hi, Anxiety, hello. Dark Horse, good to see you. Moa, Gigi, hello. Mossberg, hello. Good to see you. Garth, good to see you. Thanks for joining. Yasin, hello. Just scrolling through here. Hmm. My music, hello. Mark Hamrick, hello. Thank you guys for joining. Mossberg, I'm curious. You said I have seen signs, and I'm curious what those signs are. Y'all, how I think that this is actually really important when we think about how we define love. So much of that is actually very much so contingent on our experience. What has been your experience with love? And in order for us to kind of come to a new understanding of what love is and to have it actually align with the integrity of the love of God for us, well, we actually need to understand, well, what has love been to me in the past? And for some of us, maybe love has actually been very unsafe. It actually has been a terrifying thing to encounter love because it has proven damaging on the back end, or, you know, we trusted someone and then they betrayed us. So all of our understanding of love to date, for the most part, has been defined by our own experience rather than the essence and purity of what love actually is. I realized I actually kind of went on a deep dive last year in May, and I just really dove into what is love and like really seeking to understand it, because the love that I had had in my previous relationship, it was really upsetting how my relationship ended, and it just made me question, well, what is love to begin with? Because we both said we loved each other. And if you love somebody, how can the ending be that we both experienced? How can you end up walking away from somebody that you love? And how can that relationship die after trying so hard? And so I really started researching, what does love actually mean? And in the Greek language, there's actually 8 different types of love, or 7 different types of love in the Greek language. And there's just it's fascinating understanding how there's the brotherly love, and then there's kind of the limitless love, and then there's the romantic love. There's a romantic love that's flirty and fun, and then there's another love that actually is very loyal and it's committed. Whereas flirty love is a little bit more conditional and it's just kind of fun for that moment. And then the brotherly love that we were talking about, where it's like, okay, I'm going to come alongside you and support you. And then when we think about the love of God, he is encompassing all of these loves. But I think that those two pieces that we talked about, it's unconditional, and it is not necessarily predicated on the other person's behavior towards us. So much of the way we show up in relationship today is reactionary. It's, I am responding to what you're putting out, rather than I am going to show up today because of my values, because of what I believe, because of who I want to be. So much of the way we live and the decisions we make, our behaviors, are not rooted in our beliefs. They're rooted in a response to somebody else. Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, said between stimulus and response is choice. So a lot of the time, we are responding to stimulus from our external world, and then we respond, rather than recognizing, oh, let me take a pause and decide and choose how I'm going to respond in accordance with not just the stimuli, but in accordance with my belief system, in accordance with what I want to be more true than what somebody else is saying. And when I say more true, it's okay, we've got a stimulus, somebody's maybe annoyed at us. Our default response will probably be to literally match them, like knows like. And so it's easier to just match them in their annoyance, rather than, well, what do I want to be more true in this situation? I actually want to be able to have compassion, or I actually want to be able to give love, even if I'm not receiving it right here in this moment. But if we don't take the time to understand, what is my past understanding and relationship with love? How has that colored and shaped the way that I'm showing up right now? And then what's my ideal? What is the ideal of love? Because y'all, if we do not understand the real definition and the real word in and of itself, there's no way we can start to embody it. I was hosting a knowing retreat, and I asked couples, I was like, write down your definition of love. And not just was the definition of love different per couple, but within the relationship itself, the husband and the wife had different definitions. So when the wife is saying, I love you, the husband is hearing and interpreting it very differently because he has a different definition of love. So if we want to have relationships that are symbiotic, we need to understand, what's my predetermined definition coming into this based off of my experiences. And then what is the actual true definition of this word? What does it mean to really love someone? And I just want to read quickly. This is something that we all know for the most part, and it still warrants just a reminder, because love, the call to love, is probably one of the highest that we could ever have. This is what love is. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things. believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. And that call to love, it is so it's uncomfortable, especially considering today's environment where so much of what we're encouraged to do is to move and operate and function in accordance with how we're feeling. It's not even about being emotionally intelligent, but it's rather just being emotionally reactive. That's not love. You can be aware of how we're feeling, but we still need to be operating according to a hierarchy, a hierarchy of principle. What is more capital T true? What is more true than this temporary emotion? Because if I operate solely off of the temporary feeling that I'm having right now, there's no way I'm going to choose to love this way because I'm just reacting rather than taking that step back. And like Frankl talks about, choosing something with intention based on a hierarchical order of what is the higher call in this moment? What does love actually look like? So think of it like literally like a pyramid. There's a hierarchy of beliefs that need to guide the way that we show up with each other. And it all stems back to this concept of what we were talking about at the beginning of this show. Do I actually believe that nothing has ever happened to disturb the peace of God the Father and the Son? Because, man, if I really believe that God loves me that much, then how can I embody that kind of love for my child? Where, man, there's nothing that can disturb the peace and the connection that I have with me and my child. That doesn't mean I don't discipline them or guide them or lead them. It doesn't mean they don't get put into timeout or get into trouble. But what it does mean is that I have this impervious ability to have my love be unchanging. And that reflects the way that I interact with them and relate to them. It's interesting. We talked about why we need to understand our past relationship with love and what has love been to us in the past, because that's what we're going to model unless we identify the new definition and the right definition of it and then put something new in place of the old. So we have to recognize the old. We have to understand the definition of emotional intelligence is to be aware of, understand, and convey one's own emotions. So part of this is, okay, well, when do we start feeling the lack of love and being able to catch it right away? Why am I moving out of love right now? Why am I actually moving out of peace? What's pulling me out of it? And I like to think of this concept of vertical alignment. So, like, I am bringing my beliefs, my behaviors, my mindsets into alignment under the hierarchy. Again, we were talking about a hierarchical order that we submit ourselves to. And if love is like right up there at the top, well, then love needs to guide my actions. And so when I start acting out of love, I'm getting pulled out of alignment. So, emotional intelligence, why this is so helpful and so important is because the very first step of that is just to be aware. Oh, I'm being pulled out. And then next is to understand why. Why am I actually getting pulled out of alignment? What just happened? Was there something in the past that showed up here in the present that I'm really getting annoyed by or activated by, triggered by? Is there something actually that's kind of morally wrong happening that I need to get away from that situation so that I can move back into love and into alignment? So the more we can actually start kind of abiding by understanding our past, understanding our ideal, what does alignment even look like? And then being able to be aware and understand and then convey and control our emotions so we can get back into alignment. I'm just jumping back here in the chat. Keith Wicklife, hello. I'm glad to see you. Mossberg says, not the only time it happens. There is rains and storms that follow me or son. Wow, a cardinal looked in my window directly at me yesterday when I was crying. Wow. Oh, that's so interesting, Mossberg. I actually feel like there's something really profound there. Drumhold, hello. Thanks for joining. Real love is love between God and his disciples, Hussein says. Christopher Adams. Oh, I'm glad to see you, my friend. Greater love has no man than this, to lay down one's life for another. These are the one of many Christ's words at the final Passover. Pietro, Mamma Mia. I listened to Mamma Mia tonight, so you're in good company. No Ty, hello. Thank you for joining. Sarah, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Y'all, it's really it's really important that we understand our definition of love, and how did that definition come into being? What was modeled for us? How did our parents treat us? How did they react when we made a mistake as kids? And we see this once we actually start paying attention. This is why emotional intelligence starts with being aware, because once we just start paying attention, being aware, then we can start to understand. And then once we start to understand, man, now we can start making real change in our lives. Now we can stop acting on default and just reacting to everybody around us. Instead, now it's like, okay, now I'm actually going to sit in the driver's seat of my life. I don't have to live reactionary. I don't have to live just on autopilot or on default behavior, but now I get to choose, who do I want to be? Today, I had this moment where it was exactly what we're talking about, where I was honestly annoyed at somebody, and I just had this thought, and it was a challenge of, well, how do I and who do I want to be in this moment? Who is Christene Marie? And each one of us needs to know, who is my ideal, so that my ideal actually serves as part of that metric of alignment of, like, okay, I'm in alignment or I'm out of alignment. If we don't know who we want to be, it's really hard for us to know when we're in or out of alignment. But if I know, man, me in alignment is, and my ideal is, I'm peaceful, I'm clear-minded, I'm not gossiping, I'm loving, I'm encouraging, I'm in joy, I'm I'm helpful, I'm strategic. I know, kind of like, these are the best parts of who I am. This is who God created me to be. This is my very fullest potential. And man, I am I am under the guise of love, because love is actually at the pinnacle, and then it informs everything else. But then if I know that's my ideal, that's who I am in alignment, then when I get out of alignment, it is my choice. Am I going to stay frustrated or activated? Going to use this person or this experience as an excuse? Or am I going to stop blaming everybody else and make the choice to come back into alignment and come back into love? Because we do have the choice. I love this. Christopher Adams says, one of the toughest but most rewarding lessons I've learned is, instead of diving into sinful nature with bitterness and irritability, etc., in reaction to someone, it takes great strength to just be kind. Oh man, I like feel that in the pit of my stomach. It takes great strength to just be kind. It really does, y'all. It really, really does. Troy, I'm so glad to see you. Thanks for joining. Stephen Gonzalez, hello. Y'all, I'm glad to be back with you. I took about probably a 2 to maybe 3 week break of just not being consistent. And so I'm glad to be back, and I'm starting to go live every single day. Once again, we're going to go live every day for the next year. And I'm grateful to be with you. And this conversation is one that, man, we probably can't talk about it enough. So I'm excited to continue chatting with you. I'm going to go to bed, and then I'll be back on tomorrow morning to be with you all. And I'm looking forward to our time together. In the meantime, have a wonderful evening. Sleep well. Or Stephen, it looks like it's morning for you. It's my evening, so I'm going to go to bed, and then I will see you all bright and early on my end. Talk soon.